Hello, Diamondback fans. Welcome to our socially distanced panel on the development of LevelLink. I'm Jill Nazir. I'm the marketing director at Diamondback Bikes, and I'm going to be guiding you through this panel with some awesome people. I'll let them introduce themselves. So everybody on the call, tell us who you are, how long you've been involved with the brand, what you do. Let's start with you, Michael Brown.
Hey, Jill, thanks. I am Michael Brown. I have been basically directing the Diamondback product since 2003, so 17 years, really pushing the development of this brand and helping us make better bikes.
Awesome. Doyle?
Hey, my name's Doyle Zabola, product manager here at Diamondback. Been with the team for a long time, and yeah, excited to talk about the product.
Great. Eric?
Hey, I'm Eric Porter, and I've been a Diamondback team athlete for 10 years now. So it's been an awesome run, and I've been working with Michael Brown and the rest of the team the whole time on product development as well.
And Luther?
I'm Luke Beal. I'm the owner of Level 1 Engineering, and I have been working with Diamondback since, I think, 2011, sometime around there, 2011 or 2012. So I came on right at the start of developing Level 1. So.
Awesome. Well, we're going to start off first with a very easy question. Luther, why don't you give us a very basic description of what LevelLink is?
Well, it is a short link 4-bar counter-rotating suspension system for mountain bikes. So that's the very high-level overview. It also has a triangulated swing arm that helps make it extra stiff and wonderful. So
awesome. So before we talk about development, which we'll get into a little bit later, before we can even get to that point, you guys are always trying to kind of address a problem or a question. So Michael Brown, why don't you walk us through a little bit of what was the problem that LevelLink was addressing before LevelLink even existed?
So, we had, prior to LevelLink, we had spent some time developing our Knucklebox platform, which was really successful for us and provided us some really great functioning bikes. But that system did have its limits. And so we really wanted to seek out, a suspension system for Diamondback that would enable us to kind of achieve the goals we were looking for, which were really like shorter chain stays with longer travel, just a more controllable suspension feel and an axle path that works really well. We were also looking at how trails were being built and just how things were developing at that time to where they would be going to the future. So we really did our best to pay attention to what the market trends were and that we were meeting that for future products.
Great. And obviously you guys are all out riding all the time and you're getting feedback from real life riders. So Eric, why don't you talk to us a little bit about kind of what you were seeing out there, how you were riding, and why you needed something like LevelLink?
Yeah, so one of the things that we were trying to address when we started this program was I was riding the Sortie, which is a 120 mil travel bike, and that was front and rear. But what I was doing to get geometry like I wanted, I was putting a 140 mil travel fork on the front. And so that would give us a little bit slacker head angle and give us more travel up front where you could push into things and ride steeper stuff and be in more control that way. And so instead of having to fix it after the fact, we decided to address it and make a system that was designed around more travel in the front and a little bit less in the back. So you have the geometry that we want and a little bit more suspension up front for steep stuff and pushing the bike hard, and you still have the efficiency and the short chain stays of a little bit less travel in the rear end. So that was kind of what got us started down this path.
Awesome. So we've identified the challenge and the problem that we want to solve. Michael Brown, what led you guys to really start putting pen to paper and developing this new feature?
So, with, like I said, mentioning Knucklebox earlier, we really knew we wanted something different. And so we knew that, through experience, reaching outside of the company is a good way to go and finding people that have, I'd say a very specific experience developing suspension systems would be helpful to us. So, we looked around the industry and we understood and knew of Luther through a few contacts, sorry. And we reached out to Luther, and we had a great meeting in Interbike a number of years ago. And oddly enough, at that time, I hadn't seen Luther probably in 10 years, but we all of a sudden realized we knew each other from a bike shop experience where he worked at a shop in Portland and I was a rep for a particular brand. Anyway, so it was a great synergy, I thought, that really helped bring it all together. Luther living in Portland, us up here in Seattle. We're all in the Pacific Northwest, and we all understand the kind of riding that's really progressing the sport. So it was really a natural selection for us to kind of take on Luther and take on his ideas with regards to the suspension system. And Level Link was something he had already thought about and already kind of worked through and really helped us adopt it.
Awesome. It's always a small bike world kind of family. It's always good
yes,
time.
except for Eric being in Utah.
That's true.
A little further away.
Close-ish.
Yeah.
So Luther, why don't you walk us through a little bit more detail of Level Link? Exactly how does it work? How does the system isolate pedal force? How does it help with suspension when you're riding?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, designing suspension is pretty complicated, and there's not a lot of great talking points that go with it. But the biggest issues that I saw when I first started talking to the team at Diamondback was, as Michael mentioned, the geometry, and Eric as well, that they didn't have the exact bike that they were looking for. They were always modifying something to make it work the way they wanted it to. So I sort of start out asking what people want, and we came up with this concept of just making the bike that we actually ride. Like, we all were riding this kind of bike, so why don't we make it? And then the next step was really figuring out what parameters make the bike feel the way that we want it to feel. And when I design suspension systems, there's really 12 characteristics that I look at. And to make a bike ride great, you have to have all of those working together. And the main thing with Level Link was to make it incredibly efficient pedaling, but also sort of punch above its weight for the travel that it had. And this system of having a short link counter-rotating 4-bar basically lets the bike be really stiff and lightweight, and it also helps contribute to getting these characteristics that we want. And so it does that by having the lower link located close to the chain line and really in line with the chain, and then the upper link is perpendicular to the lower link when it's at sag. There's a lot more that goes into it, but that's sort of a way that untethers the suspension performance from the pedaling performance in a way that wasn't done on other bikes before that, and especially, with this new geometry that we were working on at the same time.
Awesome. And a question that we get a lot, other than the shorter, stiffer links, why is a short 4-bar design any better than a traditional 4-bar design?
Well, by traditional, if you're talking about like a horse link system where you have long, a distance of basically the chain stays between a pivot near the axle and a pivot near the bottom bracket, the links rotate slowly relative to each other, so it's very predictable. But you can't really change any of these performance characteristics quickly. You sort of have to do it from the beginning of the, full extension to full compression. You can't have something change many times during the compression cycle. So the real advantage of a short link system is that we can make really quick changes to these performance characteristics and be able to change them a lot more than we could on a long link system. So it's just higher performance.
And then last for you, Luther, how do you feel like Level Link compares to some of the competitors' suspension designs that are out in the market right now?
I would say that the big advantage that Level Link has is that there's less relationship between the pedaling performance characteristics and the suspension shock performance characteristics. We really decoupled those to a greater extent than other similar systems were able to. And I think you can see how successful we've been with that because other brands have actually migrated their systems to be a lot more like LevelLink than they were. So
awesome. Always ahead of the curve, guys. So kind of a question for everybody. We'll start with Michael Brown. Talk to us about the development process. You know, once you've identified the problem, you've made a decision that you want to fix it, then what happens?
Well, you know, it starts off, it's about a 24-month process to go from start to finish, you know, or getting a complete bike to market. And it starts off really with a meeting, not so different than this meeting, where we're all together, we're all talking about what we want out of the bike, what our expectations are, and you know, any similar systems that we've ridden or other things that we've seen, but just really kind of narrow down and zero in on the features and the experience that we want our riders to have. And from there, you know, we do roughly weekly meetings, and you know, we're in really weekly or daily touch with Luther as he's, you know, really working out the kinematics and the geometry and the 3D for the projects, and then we basically from there, you know, Luther could probably speak a little bit more to that in a sec, but then we pass those items off to our chosen partner, and we go to a process of sampling and then some testing, and then we go from there.
Awesome. Luther, anything you want to add to your side of that process?
yeah, you know, we work in close collaboration with you know, the partners producing the bikes. So there's you know, it's not done outside of their recommendations. You know, we're working very closely with them through that whole process. So, you know, it's always a balancing act between what we can make and how far we can push the envelope and how well we can get bikes made. So that's sort of something that we're trying to address early on in the process to make sure that the end user's experience is as good as possible.
Eric, talk to us a little bit about your role in this, you know, how involved you are right from the beginning all the way through to real life testing and feedback, and how you work with this development team.
Yeah, I think this is actually one of the coolest parts of being a professional athlete is that we get to help shape the future of the bike line based on what we're riding and what we want to be riding. And so I'll talk to the rest of the team members, the team riders, and see kind of how do you like what we're riding right now? What would you like to be riding that we don't even make right now, that maybe nobody makes right now, but what's your dream bike? And that's been the best way we've been able to approach this is so we can't see the future as to what bikes are going to be popular in 2 years. All we can do is go off of our gut feelings and kind of what bikes we want to be riding in 2 years. And so that's how the process starts. And then I'll come into, you know, come up to the office and we'll have a meeting together where I'll report back with what the riders on the team are looking for, and as well as, you know, other friends that I'm riding with and that sort of thing, and kind of bring that information to the table and then work with the product team and engineers to make that into a bike.
Awesome. Michael Brown, tell us a little bit about the process. You know, so Luther makes this design, you guys are working with the factory to get it done. Before a human can even take it out into the real world, talk to us a little bit about the testing process that happens so we know that people are able to ride this.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, as Luther finishes up the drawings for our partners in Asia for the assembly of the frame, you know, we basically make the first, you know, prototypes, which are, you know, usually in carbon from tooling. In aluminum case, we can go a little earlier with the test mule. But what we do is we actually, you know, the factory itself will do a battery of tests that go beyond, you know, the current standards out there in the marketplace that we also do direct. And then we also, secondarily, we take our frames to a third party testing facility that also takes, you know, what we've created and puts it through a battery of tests as well to really, you know, confirm the testing results that we're seeing. at our partners, and then from that point, once those have all passed through those gates of testing, then we release a bike out to, say, Eric or Doyle, Luther, and other members of the team to go out and ride it hard, in the real world.
Yeah. So then the fun part begins. So Porter, tell us a little bit about how you test the bikes, where you're riding them, and how you're giving the team feedback based on what you're trying to put that bike through.
Yeah, that's the coolest part of the process, is when we get to actually ride this idea that we've been talking about for a year or however long. And so the first rides out are usually pretty fun, because it's kind of either validating or, I mean, in this case, it's always been validating our ideas, which has been really fun and exciting. And from that point, I'll just, living in Park City, there's a lot of people here and industry and everything. And so I'm getting up at 6 a.m. to go ride spots that I know nobody else rides at that time of day, or that sort of thing. So I'm doing a lot of solo rides and to keep things under wraps and kind of pushing the bike and seeing where it's flexing, where it's making noises, what's even down to, it's not just the structural part of it and the suspension part of it, but it's also even like the cable routing and are we getting chain slap here, and do we need to make a protector here, and where is mud accumulating and things like that, so we can kind of look out for all aspects of the bike, so when it's a finished product, it's as dialed as it can be.
Nice. And Doyle, you kind of have a unique perspective because you race, you're riding all the time, but you're also a member of the in-office development team. So talk to us a little bit about how you're also out testing the bikes and what you're looking for.
Yeah, so starting a bit earlier in the process, I'll start meeting with our suppliers and manufacturers for components and start working on getting tunes and what suspension system is going to work best with the bike, whether with the dampening and all that. And so when the first mules arrive, that's a really exciting time for us, because then we kind of get into what Porter said, see what fits, see what doesn't, and then kind of work out the kinks around that. And then once we get a full bike built up, then it's time to party. And so we get out in the woods and we really just hammer the bikes really hard. The great thing for us here is we have a great enduro series here in the Northwest that I got to participate in and really test the bike on a lot of different courses and terrain. And so we're not just riding the same thing every day, even though that can be beneficial at times. Yeah, what our experience is you get a cracked chainstay or something gets warped, and then you go, great, all right, this is an opportunity now for us to enhance that area, that zone, to make it better, so that again, when we launch the bike, that everybody's getting like the perfect product that they can rely on and feel super confident with.
Awesome. So go through all of that, 2 years of really, really hard work. Level Link finally launches. What was the initial feedback, both from consumers and media? Michael Brown and Luther, maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Well, I mean, initial feedback, on the leveling system was very positive. I mean, I think people, when they got on the bikes, they instantly could tell the difference between our suspension and other people's suspension, mainly because of, I think, the features that were built into it with regards to the suspension system and just the isolation of, pedal forces, relative to suspension tuning. So our bike, again, just performed really well. And I know there was a number of editors who at first were a little intrigued by our geometry choices with regards to longer travel fronts and shorter travel rears. But as you can tell, over the last few seasons, that's definitely become more of the norm, in the marketplace. And it really has to do with the evolution of the product and the way people are riding bikes and stuff. So, but yeah, again, bikes people love them.
And I think it also is, we did the first product launch with industry people on some fairly rough trails that you would be surprised to see this kind of bike on, and I think people were pretty impressed with how well it handled that. And it was just a testament to, you can't design suspension in a vacuum. You have to take into consideration all the other parts of the bike. And so designing the suspension and the geometry and considering the end use case, which Eric is really great at driving, all of that together is what makes the final product so great. So I think where we really have excelled is combining the vision for the product with a dedicated suspension system and dedicated geometry at the same time.
Awesome. Yeah, and normally in normal circumstances, the consumers and media, everybody gets to test the bikes at events. Of course, right now it's 2020 when we're recording this, events aren't happening. So we do invite everybody to take a look at our YouTube page, and we have a lot of video of real rider feedback, including Eric Porter and Seth from Seth's Bike Hacks. They've been taking these bikes out a lot and riding them. We've gotten a lot of great consumer feedback. So I welcome everyone to check those videos out if you haven't had a chance to ride Level Link yourself. And thank you everybody for joining us. I hope everyone learned a lot about Level Link, and we look forward to seeing you at an event in the future.